So this is the 5th time I'm making this video. My phone's been running out of storage, and instead of politely reminding me to maybe make some more storage, just cuts out and stops recording. And when I've come to edit the videos, I've realised that there is no footage, and I've been speaking to nothing for the last 20 odd minutes. Times that by 4. It's been a lot of wasted time. However, we are now on Saturday, and I decided out of frustration and a little bit of anger that I wouldn't be making the video when I planned to during the week last week or this week. Is a weekend part of the week before? Yes. Might cut that bit out. So it is Saturday, and it's actually been quite a nice day. This week has been really cold and rainy. As much as I love it, it is meant to be summer, and therefore a little bit of warmer weather would not go amiss, and it's been beautiful. So I've been out for my morning walk. I'm really trying to make an effort to get out of the house, especially from the last video that I made, that I was saying that I needed to make more of an effort to leave the flat, because now from work, during working from home time, it's really quite tempting to move from where I do my work to the sofa and not do an awful lot else. So I am absolutely making big strides in getting out of the flat, and this morning I went for a beautiful walk in the local nature reserve, and it is absolutely just a time where I can switch off and enjoy nature. Try to anyway, as I know right now taking some time for myself is really important. I'm being surrounded by greenery and nature. It's quite hard not to just get overwhelmed by the natural beauty that the world has to give you. As you can see, well, you can't really because I'm standing in front of the light shade, but I've had my hair done and I feel so much more human. So I don't feel half bad now making videos because I don't look like a Yeti. So lately on LinkedIn and my professional Twitter account, I've been seeing a lot of comments around students and team members kind of finding it quite hard to have helpful conversations. And I think that's probably got to do a lot with everybody's stress right now. So I thought I would jump on and make a little video regarding a model called Advocacy Inquiry. I think it goes by a couple of different names, but I'm going to link in a few other models, mainly the Ladder of Inference. And these two models really have helped me shape the way that I communicate when not only working with learners, but also trying to have learning conversations with team members and members of the wider trust family. So without further ado, let's get straight into the topic. So like I said, this model can be used when conversing with colleagues, having proper learning, deep conversations, or it can be used to provide feedback, both in the moment and also after an event as well. So as you can see, the model is based on levels of advocacy versus the levels of inquiry. And you can have high levels in both or low levels in both, or a mixture of the two. So in this grid, displaying the types of conversations that are often had by the varying levels in both. So by having high advocacy and low inquiry, which is that top left corner, you end up with often models of conversation that are based around explaining things. It can be really good for giving information, but doesn't really build any understanding of various perspectives, or kind of build in any course of action. We can then move to having high inquiry and low advocacy, which is that bottom right-hand corner. And again, this is a very much a one-way style conversation, possibly, as you can see, interviewing or interrogating. Then you can move to the bottom left-hand corner, which it's not really a style of communication because there's nothing actually being communicated. You're not asking questions and you're not stating any views. So you're definitely in that kind of observing box. And then we're going to focus on having a high inquiry and a high advocacy level conversation, which is definitely a learning conversation, and it starts that two-way conversation technique. So obviously, you can change the levels of advocacy versus inquiry, but that's not enough on its own. You really have to make sure that you have high quality advocacy and inquiry. An example of low quality is definitely not a learning conversation, because it can definitely shift into some of the other boxes where you have things like, I can't believe you've done that, were you born yesterday? So you're stating your view and you're asking a question, but you can see what I mean by making sure that the level and the quality is right. Now, linking this in at the moment, or giving you a reference to another model that you might have to get some more time to go into more depth with, is a model called the Ladder of Inference. We are human and we judge. We judge based on our available data, our frames of knowledge, but we can often mistake our available data as fact. But these are often just our opinions, and like I said, our frames of knowledge through exposure of various different situations over the years that we have been in different jobs or worked with a different group of people. So understanding how this ladder of inference works really helps you make better informed decisions, rather than relying on your own assumptions and interpretations. Therefore, you become more aware of your own thinking and your own reasoning through reflection, which can lead to making your thinking and reasoning more visible to others, which is the advocacy part, leading to inquiring into other people's thinking and reasoning as well, which is the inquiry part, which gives us the model that we were going to talk about today, which is the Advocacy Inquiry Model. And boom, you can see how different models kind of all interlink together. I would urge you to take some time, if you don't already know the model, to go off and explore the Ladder of Inference, because it's all about double loop learning. It's all about using our data, selecting what we want to use, and then it goes through the stages of how we as humans come to conclusions or act on the data to make decisions. For me, it's really fascinating how this model sets out a pathway which is very much ingrained in how we as humans think and work mentally. And often this all happens without you even knowing it, and before you've had a chance to clock that it's going through your mind, you've come to the end of the ladder and you've judged or made an opinion. So really getting to know those processes can help you have those deeper, meaningful conversations and provide yourself with a bit more insight. So I'm going to break it to you. We do not know everything. Well, I certainly don't anyway, and through that I need to make sure that I'm inquiring into other people's views, opinions and perceived facts, because it's only through that process that I can widen that pool of data and therefore have a bigger scope of information at hand to adapt to different situations that I'm in. As discussed, this is huge when you're working with learners, because often, as we are often always told anyway, is that when you're working with learners, because they are actively learning and they are often the people that have read the most up-to-date research for clinical practice, I'm sure there are many other fields that this is relevant to as well, that we often are told that, have that conversation with the learner, you could learn something too. I don't know about you, but sometimes I find that hard to do, because we're meant to be the expert. We're meant to be that mentor or that coach or that supervisor or assessor to the people that are learning. So it does feel slightly bizarre to then say, I didn't know that, that's really interesting. But you do it once and then it becomes a lot easier to build that into conversations where you have learned something from somebody else. It doesn't matter that they're more junior than you or more senior, you've still learned something new. But before you can take that new knowledge and add it to your backpack of information or available data, you need to make sure that it is actually true. So this is where advocacy inquiry comes into play really nicely. And I'll provide a bit of a scenario to talk through, and unfortunately it'll be a clinical scenario because that's where I've used it most, to talk through how using the model can help you understand how other people work and therefore not jump to conclusions thinking that because you've done that previously that you know how to do it best. It could be that the person that you're observing, learning about the skill, has reasons behind why they're doing what they're doing. And it's really fundamental to both your street cred and their confidence that you have a better conversation than just you interrogating them and telling them what they need to do for next time. Therefore, you could say that this model builds trust, confidence, empathy, but actually through that process, I'm hoping that you will find that you enjoy those conversations even more. So let's look at an example. I am working with a student nurse in a cubicle and they're carrying out an assessment on a patient. They attach their monitoring equipment and they stand back and wait a couple of moments and the alarms start to bong. The student stands there, flitting the eyes back to the monitor, to the patient. The student's made a sound. That sound is disconcerting to me as an assessor. It's either a sound of, I don't know what's going on here, or that's interesting. I have a choice at this stage. As a clinician, I can see the patient, I'm not really that worried. I can see the monitor, I'm worried about the numbers that are on there, but from looking at the patient, I know that the patient is safe. They seem to be talking to mum, playing their computer game, and they are fine. The concern I have is what is going through that student's mind at that moment. So as an assessor or supervisor, I could say to that student, okay, I can hear that the alarms on the monitor are sounding and doesn't seem to be a lot going on. Tell me what's going through your mind, talk to me. I can then open the conversation up in action to start to build a little bit of knowledge into where I can support that learner best. What I don't do is I don't go over and silence the monitor, or I don't tell the student, that's just inaccurate, don't worry, sit the patient up, do this, do that. I don't do that at this stage because that's very much interfering and not allowing that student that important in-clinical moment to learn. The second option I have is I can see the little patient is okay and that monitor is not. And I can see that the student has clocked that there's something going on. The second option I have is to continue to stand back and watch how it plays out, being mindful that obviously I'm responsible for that patient and therefore I will absolutely act if I think I need to. I'm literally imagining this right now, which is why I'm looking over here. So the student then leans forward to silence the monitor, takes off the SATS probe, changes it to another finger, waits for a couple of moments, seems to be looking at the monitor. Ah, that's better, they say. It seems to be picking up more steadily. I hold on to that information because I'm going to use it later in the conversation. The SATs on the monitor come up to 98% and look at the patient. Yeah, I think it's probably about right. Student then moves on with their assessment. Patient's fine, they seem to be all right, and we leave the patient and move off out of the cubicle. I then make sure the student's documented everything and I say to them, before we do anything else, can we go and have a conversation? I'd love to explore that scenario in that cubicle with you. We go off, we find somewhere quiet and we have a conversation. Using the Advocacy Inquiry Model, I start by advocating. I start by saying, when we were in that cubicle carrying out that assessment on patient, I'd noticed that the alarms were going or sounding on the monitor and you appeared to be in control and you appeared to be calm. It was a little while, the alarms were still going and I could see that you kept checking back to the patient and checking back to the monitor. Can you tell me what was going through your mind at that point? What I'm not saying there is you didn't do anything. The monitors were alarming, you did nothing. That's really unsafe, that could have been accurate, you didn't do anything. I don't say that because that's me interrogating that individual. That's me with low advocacy and high inquiry. I want high advocacy and high inquiry to get that deeper level conversation going. The student then says, yeah, I kind of know that with that patient, because he tends to have this hand up on his games, it tends to get a lot colder quicker, and therefore when I use that hand to put the SATS probe on, it doesn't always pick up that quickly. So I didn't react because I could see the traces bad on the screen. The patient looked okay, I was looking at them all the time, they were talking to mum, they seemed to be laughing, I wasn't concerned, so I just thought it was a dodgy trace through the bad positioning of the SATS probe. Perfect. And then explore that conversation further by saying, okay, brilliant. What did you do next then? So then you're coaching that conversation along for them to say, well, I've moved it to the other hand or the toe and it picked up a lot quicker. The hand was a lot warmer and therefore the monitor stopped alarming and picked up better, and it showed that the saturations were 98. That conversation gives me an awful lot of information, knowing that now I don't actually need to do a lot else with that student, because I know from the conversation that they've told me, all of that clinical judgment that was going through their mind was sound. There was nothing that was wrong. However, if through that conversation the student just went, I don't know, just wasn't picking up, so I just changed it, I could then go into reasons why that SATS probe might not have been picking up. Could then go into different parts of clinical assessment with that patient that could lead to a little bit more of a worrying scenario than the one that actually played out. That way you can use that as an opportune moment to provide a bit of learning, training to that individual, and therefore again, boosting your relationship, boosting that trust between you, and telling that student that you are absolutely there for them to learn from. It's all about making sure that the conversations you have with both learners, people in your team, outside of your team, remain as highest quality that they can be. You never want to become that person that is over opinionated and doesn't listen back to the people that they're talking to. You equally don't want to be acting on information or data that is available that could be wrong. So you want to explore further where that information from the other party is coming from, and then you can actually start to fit those frames in their proper places. i.e., if they give you some information that might be, it's all right, but actually it's a little bit wrong, you can reposition that frame for them in the correct way, and that way they've learned, all of it wasn't wrong, maybe I was wrong with that part of that understanding or knowledge, but now I feel like I understand it better. Now, the Advocacy Inquiry Model was first introduced to me when I was in the clinical simulation department as the practice educator, and it was given to me as a tool to help with debriefing through the scenarios that are run in the simulation centre. Now, anybody that has done the simulation, you'll know that simulation can feel incredibly personal. You're on that stage, you're performing, you're carrying out clinical skills, and you just know that you're going to walk back into the other room after that scenario runs, and people are going to start pulling apart the scenario that you've been through. So through models like Advocacy Inquiry, they are very much higher level conversations to unpick some of that learning, unpick some of that knowledge, to then actually explore that the knowledge probably isn't wrong. It might be how they delivered that information or held a conversation that actually is the problem, as opposed to the information within it. Equally, it's very much a tool that will be able to unpick holes where actually the knowledge is not there, and therefore you can fill that gap. You can take that opportunity to provide that teaching to help the individual, rather than make them feel like, you just didn't do very well, did you? I'm sure we've all been there. So that is it. Hopefully it's given you a few ideas to go off and explore a little bit deeper into the topics. I really value these topics very highly, and I cannot stress how fundamental they are when it comes to learners, when it comes to in practice, in clinical environment, teaching, learning, giving that kind of confidence to your students, watching them grow, or newly qualified practitioners, or anybody that you're working with, that you're finding that actually they're struggling in clinical practice, or you're trying to enhance their knowledge somewhat further. I hope you enjoyed it. And if you liked it, please make sure that you give it a thumbs up, subscribe if you haven't already, and I will see you in the next video. Thanks.